many Kurds. Things that I see missing from a lot of the discourse around what's happening in Rojava now is the lack of acknowledgement or awareness of the history of the oppression of Kurds within Turkey, within Syria, within Iran and Iraq, since the advent of the nation-state model less than 100 years ago. The nation-state and the model that it requires, the organization that it requires, is predicated upon the promotion of a majoritarian nationalism that has never included Kurds. In every single country where there is a significant Kurdish population, with the exception of Armenia, which has about 110, maybe 200,000 Kurds, there have been policies banning the speaking of Kurdish language, banning the teaching of Kurdish language, as far as making it illegal to wear Kurdish clothing. This we call cultural assimilation. And it's usually used when we talk about refugees resettling in Germany and how they won't assimilate and whatever. It happens within states to indigenous populations. It has been happening to Kurds for almost 100 years. Linguistic genocide, to the point where there are generations of Kurds who do not speak Kurdish. They were not afforded the right to learn their mother tongue. It was illegal. Until 1998 in the Turkish state, a single cassette tape of Kurdish folk music, not even revolutionary music, was 3 years in jail. So if you got pulled over and you had 5 cassette tapes of music, 15 years in prison. Halil gave a great example of even just speaking Kurdish in Turkey, even though it is not illegal in the same way that it was before, will get you attacked by a mob, Turkish nationalists, who will hospitalize you. This endangers the future of the Kurdish people and their culture, our culture. So the ongoing cultural genocide, attempts at ethnic cleansing, most recently Hasan Cave, my heart, in Bakur in Kurdistan of Turkey, northern Kurdistan. 1,000-year-old villages that have been inhabited by Kurds since God knows when, flooded because Erdogan decided to remove a dam and relocate, 6,000 people, 3,000 people? We talk about ethnic cleansing and settler colonialism within particular narratives and particular discourses. It is not one that is afforded to the Kurdish struggle, and it should be. In Syria in the 70s, you have a project called the Hevrin Khalaf, which relocated, which expelled Kurdish farmers from northern Syria and relocated them elsewhere. A lot of them left without passports, without national ID cards, without national ID numbers. A stateless people living in their own country, in their own land, and replaced them with Arab farmers. The same has happened in Kurdistan of Iraq, where entire Kurdish neighborhoods are expelled and replaced with Arab populations. This is settling populations. This is, colonialism is perhaps not the best term within the context, but this is ethnic settling of a non-indigenous population into land that is not theirs, predicated upon the expulsion of the indigenous people to that land, who are the Kurds. And so to leave this from the discourse of Turkey invading Rojava is an egregious error, because that contributes to the discourse that the Turkish state has put out that their actions in northern Syria are fighting terrorist rebels, as opposed to engaging in what they have even openly called for, ethnic cleansing. The Turkish state, when they announced this invasion, and mind you, this genocide is being televised, it is being broadcasted, it is being celebrated by Turkish nationalists. When they announced this invasion, their goal was to do what? Their goal was to rid their border of terrorist rebels, meaning the PYD, and to relocate the 3.6 million Syrian refugees that they have taken in. Mind you, they accepted a very hefty sum from the EU to resettle these refugees, and place them all in northern Syria, engaging in a huge act of ethnic cleansing, and returning Syrian refugees who fled the Assad regime to within Assad's borders. This is violence on many levels. This is violence against indigenous populations of that area who are not just Kurds, but Assyrians, Armenians, Yazidis, and also returning refugees to the same dictator that they fled. At this point, and it's hard, leftist circles and argue with tankies on Twitter all day. It's exhausting. If someone wants to take my phone from me, please do. It's hard because we are watching a genocide happen and we are helpless. You can literally watch it from your phone. Hevrin Khalaf, a Kurdish politician, a young woman with a very wonderful, beautiful vision for the future of Syria and the future of Kurds, was executed at the side of the road by Rojava 2 days ago. Her car was pulled over, so that this is one of the many Islamist groups that are being supported by Turkey. They're Islamist groups that have splintered off from Jabhat al-Nusra, from Ahrar al-Sham, from Al-Qaeda, from Daesh, ISIS. And they are doing Erdogan's dirty work alongside with his own soldiers. There's something like 25 different militias that are working alongside Erdogan, that are supported. They're called the TFSA, the Turkish-backed FSA. And they have been, and particularly I've been watching these videos and they are brutal and awful to watch. They have been pulling cars off the side of the M4, this highway, making everyone get out of the car, and then lining them up and executing them. And filming it. There's literally a video where this militant, he calls to his friend, he says, film me while I shoot them. And then there's a video of it. And it is absolutely terrifying to watch. Some of them are YPG and YPJ or SDF forces. A lot of them are civilians. And it is absolutely heartbreaking to watch from here, because at the same time, in Kamishli, you have hospitals being bombed, and medics being targeted, and ambulances not being allowed anywhere they need to go. And in Serekaniye, God, my heart, you have the city center being bombed, civilians being attacked, journalists, the center where journalists gather being bombed. And there's nothing we can do. The only thing we can ask for, and as someone who generally opposes imperial intervention, this is very difficult to vocalize. The only thing we can ask for is a no-fly zone. Because Turkish airstrikes are targeting civilians, and there is no way around that. And there is no amount of sanction pressure that can be put, or finally all of these countries in Europe halting their arms deals to Turkey after years and years of Kurdish activists and Armenian activists telling them not to. Too late, they already got the F-16s, what can we do now? No amount of sanction pressure will stop Erdogan from bombing civilians. The only way to stop it is to not allow the planes up there. Ooh. Sorry, y'all, this is a very rough week. There's so little, and this is hard for me as a diaspora Kurd to watch my people be slaughtered from my phone. But I know that the amount of pain and suffering I am feeling, rather existentially, is nothing compared to the children of Rojava. And the children of the Rojava revolution, whose ideas will never die, who are facing attacks every day, facing shellings every day. So far, their conservative estimates have 100,000 people have been displaced, just around Serekaniye and Tel Abyad. More accurate estimates, because that was from 2 days ago, put the amount of people fleeing Turkish airstrikes at about 200,000 people who have nowhere to go. The few things that we can do here are rally like this, show our support and our solidarity. There's been a beautiful outpouring of support for Rojava, for the revolution, for the Kurds, and the violence that they have faced historically and face to this day across the world. We're talking Athens, Madrid, Berlin, Paris had 2,000 people protesting yesterday. Atlanta right now, everywhere. Of all places, Bloomington, Indiana. I was so surprised. Spent a summer there. Did not expect Kurdish support. One, show our solidarity. Let them know that we stand with them. It helps boost morale. 2, there are lists that can be circulated of companies and organizations that have either stock that is owned by Turkey or that have bases in Turkey itself that can be boycotted. And there is going to be a call for an academic boycott of Turkey as well. Andre can talk more about that forthcoming. We also can try and put pressure, liberal pressure, on different U.S. politicians to act in the interest of stopping genocide in its tracks. And this begs the question, if you had a chance, and this is the question I've been posing to a lot of Tankies, if you had the chance to stop a genocide, but required you to collaborate with your enemy, would you do it? Would your conscience be clean if you decided to stick to your convictions from your armchair in your suburban home and allow genocide to happen? Because this is ethnic cleansing. When this young Kurdish politician was executed, Turkish media reported on the execution as a successful neutralization operation. That is sickening. That is absolutely sickening. They are celebrating the execution, cold-blooded execution of a young Kurdish woman. This is a war crime. There's no way around this. This is absolutely a war crime. So thank you all for coming out and showing your support. It should not end here. There's more that we can do. We need to stay strong. So before we march, and our marching plans have changed, there is an Impeach Trump rally at Embarcadero. They've invited us to join them because finally our political orientation aligns with theirs, so they care about it.
This is Halil Yenigün. I am an academic and from Turkey, and I live in the Bay Area now. And today we are witnessing, of course, for the American part, you could say betrayal of the Kurds who have lost their lives against ISIS and for certain interests of the Western powers in the region. But for us, it means a lot more different thing as well. It also means the betrayal of peace in the region. As an academic, I have lost my job back in the day, 3 years ago, signing a petition to stop the war there in Turkey, and we couldn't succeed in that. But all the time what we said, we want peace, and this is why we signed the petition. We did not want like our academic situation to be the main idea, main subject. Right now, actually, unfortunately, it escalated to a new level, a whole new invasion of the whole Rojava region, Western Kurdistan. Last year we had it also in Afrin, and we also warned a lot of people as anti-war activists in Turkey. This is a signal of what is coming up next, and we could not build the solidarity at the time against the fascist Turkish state. Right now, it is all clear to everybody who is in alliance with who, which leaders are allies of which leaders, and Kurds are still alone in that region and fighting for their self-determination, their rights and freedoms, and this has been going on forever. Now, as a person, a Turkish person from Turkey, so we have a responsibility. I feel myself, of course, responsible for all what's going on. First Armenian genocide 100 years ago, and then like Greek genocide, and now we have the last indigenous people on our land, and we want to share that land peacefully. We don't want to fight wars, and we don't want to send any of our kids, Turkish or Kurdish, to the war zone. And this is not a war that has been going on for centuries between Turks and Kurds, as it is portrayed by certain people. But this is an imperialist war where a leader, a political leader, who wants to perpetuate his waning power by just waging a war, mobilizing the whole Turkish constituency behind him, and also committing another war crime by displacing, ethnically cleansing a region and displacing the Kurds who are the indigenous people there, and also settling another displaced people, the Syrian refugees in Turkey, into this war zone, and this is also a violation of international conventions, a very clear violation, and it is war crime, and they have been committing war crimes from day one.
What happened? You were an academic in Turkey. Weren't there thousands of academics who were fired and municipal workers, others?
Actually, exactly for the same reason as we are facing now. What we wanted is the cessation of violence against the Kurdish citizens of Turkey, who were the residents of the southeastern Turkey, the Turkish Kurdistan, and what we wanted that time was to put an end to that and to have peace again between Turks and Kurds and all the peoples in Turkey.
And you signed a petition, and that's...
Yes, we signed a petition, and we always said I lost my job because of that, but we...
What was your job at?
I was an academic. I was an assistant professor at a small university in Istanbul. Yeah, and right now I am an exile over here, but it was for the exact same reason. What we wanted is the end of violence, end of war against Kurdistan. It was that time Turkish Kurdistan. Right now it is Syrian Kurdistan, Western Kurdistan, Rojava, and we always said this is not about academic freedom of certain people, like saying some marginal views, but it is about a clear demand for peace. And that time we could not prevent that in Turkey, and we have been trying to build a coalition to build peace in the region between Turks and Kurds and Arabs and other peoples of the region. But what is going on is certain leaders, both regional and global leaders, trying to sow discord among all the peoples in the region.
And what is the role of the United States in all of this? Did the United States oppose the purging of the universities, of yourself and others?
The United States in this war, of course, had a complicated trajectory about that, and people over here, because of the US support for the Kurds for a while, they thought Kurds were basically in line with the imperialist agenda, but they were not. Actually, the US basically wanted to use them for their own purposes for that time being, and we all know from the very beginning Kurdish interests were intrinsically anti-imperialist because they are already encircled by all the three regional powers, which have been engaged in slow genocide against them for the last century or so.
The ethnic cleansing that's gone on in Turkey, how long has that gone on by the Erdogan government?
By Erdogan,
previous governments?
Actually, this has been a long trajectory for the Kurds in Turkey. This, I would call it a slow genocide. It is because, it started at first with the Armenian genocide, and at that time, Kurds were unfortunately also, involved in that process. However, after the Greek genocide, after Turkey was basically 100% Muslim, they then turned against the last remaining indigenous people of that Anatolia. Indigenous
Turkish nationalism. I mean, trying to attack minorities.
It has been actually the norm. It has been the pattern from the very beginning, and that's why, as a Turkish-speaking person from Turkey, as ethnically a Turkish person, I said, and we all say now, among a portion of us, as anti-war activists, as peace academics, as peace activists in Turkey, we all say we don't want to be part of that. We don't want to be part of complicit in this third major crime against the indigenous people in Turkey. This is the last remaining indigenous people in Turkey, and so we just have the Turkish part of that. But what Turkey is doing now is basically extending its arm against the indigenous people that are in the Syrian on Syrian land, the part of Kurdistan in Syria.
Well, wasn't Erdogan's plan to rebuild the Ottoman Empire, to take over many countries with the vacuum of the United States?
He might have that dream, and of course Erdogan's constituency share that dream a lot, and he's also selling that that way, but also framing to the international world as this is not a war, this is an operation against terrorism, and he's using the exact same war on terrorism discourse. As you can see, also Erdogan's supporters, also in the Middle East, among the Arab countries, also among some other countries, also in Europe and the US, you can see a lot of Erdogan supporters that he has been investing in them to build a lobby over here among certain Erdogan supporters, and they repeat the same thing. And what is sad is the same people like who have been victimized by the war against terrorism discourse, who have been labeled as terrorists just because they are Muslim. Now like you can see some of them just replicating that same discourse of terrorism against now this time the Kurdish people, and they are calling YPG is just exactly the same thing as PKK, and they are terrorists, and that's why this war against terrorism, and that is the most despicable thing. And the other thing as well, so Turkish the Kurdish population in Turkey and elsewhere, of course it is their indigenous land, and what Erdogan is now aiming at is to displace maybe millions of Kurds from their indigenous homeland and placing Arabs there in between them, like as an Arab belt, so that there would be a buffer zone between Kurds in Turkey and Kurds in Syria. And this is war crime. This is what we call, this is going against all the international norms and conventions. And the Syrian refugees in Turkey, they just became a trouble for him now, because his constituency, which is nationalist, they don't want them. They don't want, and they have been turning the Syrian refugees' lives into hell now, like for the last several years. And Erdogan wants to put together his constituency back, and then the only way for him look like this is the only way for him. He is going to get rid of these refugees, and he's going to place them, and that's how he's going to create a buffer zone. And this whole thing is in itself a war crime.
And wasn't Erdogan involved in colluding with the ISIS forces to attack the left, the bombings in Turkey against activist ISIS, and his scandal that they were...
Exactly. Actually, the board has not done enough in order to reveal. We have all the information with us.
You didn't like that being exposed?
There's a lot of leaks about that, but Turkish government is basically getting away with that, as always, because they are using the refugee card again and again against the European powers, against the West, and they are buying that, and they are appeasing that. And we are in the moment of this guilty man moment, like the Second World War situation, where they went in line. Remember, like the Berlin Olympics, 1936, they were saluting basically Hitler at the time. I don't see European powers, any different in terms of their records in the last few years. They have been arming Turkey, Germany, and France, and others. And Erdogan actually found a trick. He can go around, and then he can basically offer them certain handsome trade deals, and they just buy into that, and he can just buy their silence. And this has been going on for a very long time. And and Erdogan right now in Turkey, right now, if I speak now this way in Turkey, some moments later I will be in jail, and I have friends now in jail just because of doing the same thing as I am doing, just to call this war an occupation.
And how many people? Who's in jail? Do you know some names of people?
So right now the numbers are 121. Actually, the internal minister of Turkey today boasted about the numbers, and the only crime is calling this war occupation. So he said the only legitimate way to call this is not occupation, but it is operation against terrorism. If you don't call that, if you don't follow this line, if you tweet something, if you post something on your social media, you will be jailed. And right now 121 people are already in jail. Local politicians from, for instance, Felicity Party, an opposition religious party, and its member just gave a speech during the assembly in a city town hall meeting, and now he's been arrested just for that, just for opposing war. So that is also part of the tactics, and we have been observing that for the last several years now. All the anti-war activists in Turkey are being jailed, and they are in and out of jail. Sometimes they are convicted, sometimes they just get out after many months or sometimes years without indictments. But it has been going. This has been a pattern now.
Okay, and what can people do here about what's going on?
This is not a plea from American government. This has never been a plea from any of the Western governments. We all know they are in bed with Erdogan for many years. Our appeal is to international community, meaning all the conscientious people around the world, people like us, common people, human beings, simple human beings like us, who have a certain notion of justice and liberation. And this is something that they all know. This is struggle of an indigenous people against occupying powers, and all over the world, like we all know what genocide is, and many peoples here in North America, in South America, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, they all know what genocide is, and this is another instance of that. And the only difference is this is now in the 21st century, and people are observing that, and they can easily frame everything as war against terrorism, thanks to a certain discourse that has been rampant over here for many decades now.
My name is Yusuf. I'm from Rojava, part of Turkey and north of Syria. So we just want to protest today about what happened in Syria, because Turkish army, Turkish airlines, they all bomb our homeland. So we feel so sad because all our family right there, they're escaping, but there's no way to go anymore, because 4 years ago we fight against ISIS and finally we won against the ISIS, but now Turkey want to take our land. Turkish government, they bomb the keys, they bomb all over civilians. Our heart is very broke. There is nothing to do. We feel so sad because our family need help. There is no food, there's no electric, no gas, nothing. So
this ethnic cleansing, is there that ethnic cleansing going on now?
it is ethnic cleanse. It is ethnic cleanse. So they said on the news, because news is always fake. They say we are try to fight against ISIS, but there is no ISIS. There is Kurdish people over there. We've been fighting for ISIS about 5 years, but Trump, he just run away. I don't know what they do under the table. They do agreement or something. They run away. They leave us alone. And now Turkish army, they just fight with nothing, just own self, just their own guns. So we just try to protest over here. Maybe somebody can hear our voice. Maybe somebody can help us, stand us together.
What's going on with the attack by Turkey on Rojava?
Yeah, I mean, Turkey withholds a lot of, territory that belongs to the Kurdish people. As people probably know, the Kurdish people are stateless people that their land have been occupied by Syria, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, among others. And this was done with the collaboration of U.S., British, Russian imperialism in the 19th and 20th century. So, during all this war in Syria provoked by the United States and its allies, the Kurdish people are being hostage by all these, factions and imperialist interests. So now Turkey, a NATO ally of the United States, have launched this incursion into Syrian territory with the interest of oppress the Kurdish people and also to occupy land that belongs to the Kurdish people. So we as Americans or colonial subjects of American citizenship, like in the case of mine, and also a United States Army veteran, I feel the responsibility to come over here to protest and stop this genocide by Turkey backed by the United States.
This would not happen without the United States.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the Turkish state, Turkey is a client of the United States. Most of the weaponry and military equipment of the Republic of Turkey has been provided, by large by the United States and other allied powers such as Germany too.
And Russia, Putin?
Well, yes, they do have their interests in the region. They got conflicted interests, and also they do not collaborate when they do have to. And definitely everybody, in that region that occupies Kurdish territory has a perverse reactionary interest to oppress the Kurdish people, including Russia, which makes pacts with the United States. Russia is a capitalist country. It's not a progressive state. It's not a socialist state. It's not a worker state anymore.
The reason why we are here today, there are two. First one is to oppose what is now happening in northern Syria, and that is anti-cleansing. The reason why Turkey is invading northern Syria has absolutely nothing to do with securing Syria and the Turkish borders. It has absolutely nothing to do with Turkish security. It has nothing to do with the fight against ISIS. It has everything to do with the idea that the Kurds need to be ethnically cleansed. This is something that goes way back in Turkish history. Every modern government in the history of Turkey tried, with some success, to squash rebellions, occupy Kurdish lands and towns, and do everything that they can to prevent Kurds obtaining any kind of autonomy within Turkey and outside of Turkey. What happened last month is almost unprecedented. With Erdogan, Turkish president, coming to the United Nations and saying that his goal, the goal of the Turkish state, is to resettle the refugees from Turkey to Syria. These 3.6 million people, according to the report of Turkish Interior Ministry, are not from northern Syria. 66% of them are from Damascus, from the regime-controlled area. Only 17% are from northern Syria. What we have here is that the president of a country that is a member of NATO has actually announced ethnic cleansing. He has done it before. This is the fourth Turkish invasion in Syria since 2016. The most significant one is the one in Afrin, which ended with complete, devastating destruction of Kurdish homes, families, and livelihoods. What happened in Afrin has been documented by two United Nations reports. 2018, both agreed that what happened was a radical, this is a code, restructuring of the demographic component of the region of Afrin. They blame Turkish army and they blame Erdogan directly for this. So the first reason why we are here is to stop ethnic cleansing. The second reason, to say that this is happening. The second reason is to actually say why this is happening. I came back from Rojava in June, and what I have seen there is a revolution that rests on the idea of liberation of women, on ecological environmental sustainability, and direct grassroots democracy. I have seen representative democracy being replaced by real democracy. I have seen justice system, state justice system being replaced by restorative and transformative justice system. I have seen the police forces being abolished. I have seen prisoners treated in an incredible way, humane way. I have seen universities and schools organized in councils. Kindergartens had children councils. Students had their own councils. Professors had their own councils. I have seen what I have not seen in my life, and I hope that we are going to be able to see it again. I have seen an actual revolution taking place. Revolution that is beyond anything really that I can express in words. Revolution that begins with the idea that we need to liberate women in order to liberate life. Jinjian Azadi, women, life, freedom. The idea that this revolution is about love, that love is the truth, and the truth is free life. This revolution is something that is being destroyed right now. And I think this is actually the main reason why the states are going after Rojava, because it represents a model of a decent, genuine, free, democratic society in the middle of the Middle East. So we have to oppose anti-cleansing, but we also have to defend the politics of Rojava. Kurds have a saying, which is, we have no friends from the mountains. We have to send a message everywhere, from San Francisco, from Berkeley, from East Bay, from Germany, from every single place on earth, that Kurds do have friends other than mountains. And this is us. Everybody who actually believes that Rojava represents everything that we fought for as feminists, as leftists, as people who believe in decency and democracy. So, long live Rojava Revolution. Biji, biji, Rojava. Biji, biji, Rojava. Biji, biji, Rojava. Biji, biji, Rojava. Biji, biji, Rojava.
Ve kaden cihane dengdiler zine. Dengdiler zine. Destara proletarya hurdu herine. Hurdu herine. Kedvarunu keranj qada hildine. Qada hildine. Destare proletarya hurdu herine. Hurdu herine. Kedvarunu keranj qada hildine. Qada hildine. Qada hildine. Qada hildine. Hoşiyan raşedin kadeşidan didan. Kadeşidan didan. Sümbüla savdıdan müdenge partizan. Müdenge partizan. Hoşiyan raşedin kadeşidan didan. Kadeşidan didan. Sümbüla savdıdan müdenge partizan. Müdenge partizan. Pere baye heri kandı jnavdı reçiyan. Jnavdı reçiyan. Rabu serpiya şında Kürdistan. Şında Kürdistan. Jnav divar zindana hayat sereçiyan. Hayat sereçiyan. Hıldın arasan berkhudan jiyan. Berkhudan jiyan. Rehranahi rebeti da khuyna şehidan. Khuyna şehidan.